I'm talking about serious business. It's the crisis of global sustainability, which is the name of the book I have written. And as a former statistician, I'm now giving you some trends about the seriousness of the climate change, which is threatening the future of humankind. And what I'm saying basically is that the globe and human race is facing an unprecedented emergency due to climate change and a number of interconnected issues which are dealing with energy, economic growth, decisions on infrastructure and technology. And the urgency is key. We cannot wait just 10 or 20 years from now. The postponement for the time there is enough political will is not anymore possible and sustainable. And I think that we have very big problems, 4 of them for the humankind for the next decades to deal with. One is dealing with climate change, and I'm dealing mostly in my presentation on that. The second is on interconnectedness between climate change and global energy use, and unfortunately I cannot do that today, but in my book I have a chapter on these things. And the meta problem is something which I already mentioned, namely that what we do now will determine the global development path for decades and centuries to go. Of course, there are many other issues which are very much related, like global food crisis, population growth, and financial world financial crisis. Everything is connected, and now in the world we are really trying to starting to see. So on the global climate change, warming of the planet and global CO2, carbon dioxide and other greenhouse emissions have continued without interruption. And this is showing the trends, and there is no sign, unfortunately, on a slowdown. And coming from the UN, I've been spending like 30 years of my life at the UN doing my PhD dissertation on UN reform. I reluctantly say that UN has really missed in one of its major tasks, because we see these growing trends. On the topic of emitting countries, we see that the US is going down, which is a positive sign, but it's still many times much more than others in the globe. The rise of China is really threatening, scary, and also India is going up. Another issue related to climate change is that Arctic and Antarctica are warming more rapidly than other parts of the world. And this trend will just intensify the rise of sea level in the near future. This is showing the global surface temperature changes from 1970s until now. And you see the red is increasing quite dramatically when we go to the bottom right square. This is relatively quite scary picture about the Greenland's ice sheets melting. And of course there is still insufficient data available, but if these current trends of an exponential ice mass loss are continuing, the 10-year stubborn time, that's a particular method of measuring this, the green light, would lead to increase of 1 meter sea level increase rise by 2067 and 5 meters by 2090. And 5-year doubling time, a different method, red line, would lead to a 1 meter sea level rise by 2045 and 5 meters by 2057. This is a little extreme view, but it's quite close already. Think about 5 meters in 2057. Another problem related to this is the so-called tipping points. Tipping points are irreversible mechanisms that might trigger self-reinforcing catastrophic climate change. And some of the scientists say that it is going to be in a matter of years rather than decades, and some of course say that it's already happening and has happened. And scientists have determined some 15 candidates for tipping points. Related to this is tipping points and rise of sea level are closely related. And we have to say that there are two schools of thoughts among climate scientists on this issue. There is one school of cautious climate scientists, and I would say the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change reports are belonging to this cautious school of thought, and they stress the lack of data and difficulties in methods, and sea level would rise only just half a meter and 1 meter. But another older scientist who do not deny that there is a lack of evidence and data and difficulties in methods, but try to estimate the impact of these tipping points which I mentioned for our decision making, and they would see the sea level would rise from 5 to 7 meters in 100 years, and already our children and grandchildren are seeing the major effect on that. And here are the kind of graphic presentation of the tipping points. We cannot go through them, but quite the famous example is methane in the tundra, in the northern part of the globe. If it's melting, it releases, and if tundra melts, it releases methane, which is like a 20 or more times more powerful greenhouse gas than CO2, and then it warms the atmosphere and reinforces this kind of vicious loop of acceleration in the atmospheric temperature. James Hansen, NASA's former head of Goddard Institute for Space Studies and leading climate scientist at Columbia University Research Institute, has used the paleoclimate history as evidence to see what is really happening in the globe. And here is the picture which is showing this. And what is important in this picture, that during this century, which is on the right side of the picture, over here, we are approaching conditions, which is the CO2-driven temperature increase that existed 10 to 40 million years ago. And that's to the left in the picture, 10 and 40 million years ago. And there was much less ice and no ice at all some 40 million years ago, and sea level was 6 to 7 meters higher than today. And the red arrow here, 2 centimeters at your right, represents CO concentration that we expect to reach when we will meet in a couple of decades the international accepted goal of 2 Celsius degrees rising of global temperature compared to pre-industrial times. And if you follow to the red from right to the left, you will see that this CO2 concentration was the same. The Earth had some 10 million years ago when sea level was 6 to 7 meters higher than today. And if you go to the higher level, which is really the trend right now, we can see that in a paleoclimate time, the sea level was some 70 meters higher than today. So this gives a kind of paleoclimate perspective of the situation on the globe. So, in a way, the implications of this is that the official objective of limiting warming to less than 2 Celsius degrees above pre-industrial level is likely, if this analysis is correct, produce 6 to 7 meters sea level rise over time, wiping out cities like New York or Helsinki in their current form, and it is In the long term, if you go to this 4 Celsius increase, which today seems likely, if nothing is happening, then this could eventually bring a rise of 70 meters sea level rise over time. And this is a same sunset view what Florida would look like if sea level rises 5 meters and even in 100 years. And there has been quite a lot of talk that we should adapt to this higher level target 4 Celsius decrease and what it really means. And I'm just concentrating on the second paragraph, which is where Professor Hans-Joachim Schnellhuber, which is the director of one of the most famous Institute of Climate Change in Germany, is saying that what is the difference between 2 Celsius world and 4 Celsius world is the human civilization. 4 Celsius temperature increase probably means global carrying capacity below 1 billion people, and now we have 7 billion. So where are all these people going? So if we continue like this. Further evidence on climate change is the changing, increasing rate of natural catastrophes linked to climate and as well as loss of biodiversity. This is a little slow. And here you see the physical events like earthquakes at the horizontal bottom line, and then above the meteorological events like storms and hydrological events and floods going upwards. And another trend is the decline in biodiversity since 1970 in this graphic, and you see the species are going down, and it says in the text the tropical freshwater index declined even more, 70%, and the average population decline was some 37% since 1970. And this is showing what 4 Celsius world might look like in terms of temperature in droughts and desertification in various parts of the globe. Trends in international awareness. Club of Rome was founded in 1968. I happen to have the honor to be a member of it now. And then in 1972, there was the first UN conference on human environment in Stockholm. There was quite a lot of member states, 109 recommendations. We have had a number of conferences, Rio de Janeiro in 1992, 2000 World Summit in Johannesburg, and then Rio Plus 20. And there is a kind of trend from the last one, from commitments to voluntary action, which is a little bit alarming in terms of what the international system is able to do. Here we see in the next one the climate change talks, and now in 2015 we will have a major conference in Paris, and whether we will have a major agreement or not is a crucial issue. And as I said, so far the UN system has really failed in this major task, as greenhouse gases has gone up at the same time as we have so many meetings and so many participants and high level. UN is still doing quite a lot of good work, and I've just mentioned the UN Global Compact and Caring for Climate initiative. We just came some other people from there. They're doing great work and need our support. So what should be done? The 2015 Paris UN Framework Convention on Climate Change Agreement is vitally important. I guess Joni, our next speaker, will talk about that. We need to change the UN, create a new global paradigm on science, and mobilize masses of world citizens. And I think this is more or less the same thing, that we have to activate scientists and scholars to be bolder and create mass movements. And UN Secretary General should take the lead, and he has taken quite an active role in this, and combined his forces with the IMF heads and IMF and World Bank heads, and UN reports should become sharper, and we should have some kind of multidisciplinary policy planning capacity and promote global emergency union at the level of office of the Secretary General, which we don't have. And I've been working on these things for quite a number of years when I was at the UN. Civil society, media, mobilize all kinds of rock stars, movie stars, directors, painters, artists, as Private Ivan was mentioning, arrange concert. A number of things have been done, but we don't have a really critical mass to change the views of ordinary citizens. And my conclusion is that the globe is soon hitting its limits, something that it has done already. And early warning was given already some 30 to 40 years ago when, for instance, the limits to growth, the report by the Club of Rome. Some scholars are optimistic, some are pessimistic. Whether we need some kind of world power moment which will shake us into action, that might be necessary. Sandy was something which already did that to some extent here. I think the youth will be the critical mass in a way, because they are the victims of all of this in the future. And Occupy Wall Street, in a way, the small number of people already changed the agenda of our talks, although it was not the presidential election last time, but although it was not very long-lasting. And actually the Occupy Wall Street will move from Occupy Wall Street to Save Wall Street, because that's the really issue with the future decades. Green projects are important, and it's important, really important, set up a new values like keeping the future of our future generations in mind. That is really the key, that not only our national interest and personal interest, but what is happening to our children and grandchildren and future generations. And more information is in my book, and there's one display copy over there and some other forms of summaries. Thank you very much.